Let me guess your situation. You have nothing to do. No chores, no job, no routine, no friends, no girlfriend, no responsibilities, and a dream. Dark Souls 3. You play the game and actually start to enjoy it. But while playing the game, you discovered that you've collected a lot more achievements than you expected. You've beaten the game and you realize a lot of these achievements are just defeating bosses. So you say to yourself, it wouldn't hurt to 100% the game. Yes, it would. But why? Why is Dark Souls 3 such a torture chamber to 100%? There are many reasons, but there is one thing that every person that has done it still has trauma from. Covenants. Let me break it down to why covenants are hell. Item collecting is an essential to 100%ing this game. With some items, you need to defeat multiple bosses. With others, you need to beat the game multiple times. But the worst ones to collect most of the times come from covenants. Covenant items. Items you get from ranking up in covenants. Since covenant items are such a pain, I just decided to make a short video to explain all of them. In this video, I'll explain how to obtain all covenants, how to farm them, and the best locations to farm them. First off is going to be Way of the Blue. To get this covenant, you need to talk to the woman on the chat multiple times. Because the first time you talk to her, she gives you an item to progress, and the other time she gives you the Way of the Blue covenant badge thingy. She sits right over there. Forgot her name. Probably Amanda. The next covenant is the Sunlight Covenant, also known as the Sunlight Brothers or Sun Bros. I forgot. How to get this covenant is pretty simple. You go to the Undead Settlement, then there will be this door, open it, and you'll see a big hole. Now ignore all forms of safety and jump into that hole. Inside will be the Sunlight Badge, and you will have the Sunlight Covenant unlocked. The next covenant is right over here. Anyways, okay, next up, Mound Makers. The next covenant will be the same path, and then completely ignore that doorway and go right next to it. Now be careful, there will be a lot of enemies, so try not to die. What the? So once you get up the rooftop, you'll see this big boy. Okay, so next up you need to consensually get kidnapped. Yes, you heard me correctly, consensually get kidnapped. Also, do not progress in the game before getting this covenant, or else you will kindly decline. Okay, next up is the Covenant Blue Sentinel. When getting to the Road of Sacrifice, you just need to progress, and you will find another Unkindled Knight. Now do not progress in the game, or else they will disappear. Just go through their dialogue, and then talk to the big guy, and he'll give you the Covenant badge. The Unkindled Knight should be sitting right over there, against the wall. Okay, next up is the Covenant Watchdogs of Farron. Simple to say, it's just like last time, just progress through the game to Farron's Keep, which is just straight from the Blue Sentinel bonfire. There are certain enemies like crabs, but they only do one attack, so I'd recommend just rolling. Now that you've reached Farron Keep's bonfire, it's time to actually search for the Watchdogs area, which is just a ladder. Do I know where that is? No. I don't even know the layout of Farron's Keep. Oh hey, would you look at that, I found it. So from the Farron Keep's bonfire, just follow my movements, which is just going straight. There are a lot of enemies on the way there, so I'd recommend being a good level 4 Farron's Keep. And don't worry, getting jumped is part of the process. Eventually you'll end up at the next bonfire, and then it's just a short walk. Just go to the exit of the bonfire, turn right, and there will be a ladder. Go up the ladder, and you'll see a big doggo. Just talk to that doggo and you'll get the Farron Covenant badge. The next covenant is Rosaria's Fingers. You should have explored Cathedral of the Deep by now, and then you should also know where this is. I'll just show you the way to the shortcut that you're going to have to take to get to this covenant. It's right here. Then afterwards, there'll be another set of doors, and you should just follow the way I'm going. You should be very careful with this area since there are a lot of enemies that do a lot of damage. Yeah, so be careful. After you don't get demolished by these big knights, you'll end up here. After getting through these bone marrow babies, you should get to this door. Once you get through the door, you should talk to her since she has a nice personality, and you'll get the covenant. The last two covenants will be in the Lithril of the Borea Valley. The next covenant is Aldrich Faithful. For the first one, you'll start off at Pontiff's Bonfire. You just walk into Anor Londo and just follow where I'm going. Once you get to the stairwell, there will be an invisible wall and a ladder. Once you go down the ladder, be prepared because you're going to see some old friends. Remember that mortifying dog? Yeah, there's 2 of them now. Once you kill mortifying dogs, you'll get to light the bonfire in the middle of the room. You see that depressed guy over there in the corner? Just interact with him and you'll get the covenant. The next covenant is Blades of the Dark Moon. You'll start at the Anor Londo bonfire and you'll go to this spinny maneuver thing. Now, if it's up or down doesn't really matter. You'll just have to be at a certain location. This one to be exact. Once you get to this area, you should walk forward and you'll automatically start walking on your future. Yeah, I don't know how that works either. Once you get to the bonfire, you'll see a girl sitting next to it. Talk to her and you'll get the covenant badge. Since you have every covenant now, I'll explain how covenant farming works. Every covenant has a special item. Once you collect that item, you can go to the covenant shrine. Once you get to the covenant shrine, you can use that special item to rank up in the covenant. Now the covenant shrine is almost always located where you got the covenant badge. There's only one covenant that isn't located immediately next to the covenant badge, and that is the Sunlight Covenant. The Sunlight Covenant shrine will be near the Dragon Armor bonfire. Once you get to the covenant shrine, you can use that specific item to rank up. Now, why would you like to rank up? When you get to rank 1 or 2 in a certain covenant, you'll get an item from that covenant. Now, this all sounds pretty simple. Get items, go to the covenant shrine, and rank up, right? Now, why will your soul evaporate when covenant farming? Well, simple. It's the way you do it. Covenants are mainly used for online play, and when you complete a raid or another type of act in online play, you'll get the specific item for the covenant badge you have on at that moment. That probably sounds like the best way to farm, but the thing is, matchmaking isn't really that great in Dark Souls 3. It takes a long time to queue up, so the main option that everyone takes is offline farming. Now, offline farming is pretty simple. Kill an enemy that has that specific item for the covenant that you're farming. Only there is one life-drenching problem. Those specific items used to rank up in the covenant have a 1% drop rate, sometimes even lower. Once you're done with all of the covenants, you won't have a soul left to appreciate your accomplishment. Anyways, let me explain every way to farm every covenant. So this is the setup you want to have for farming. The weapon depends on what you're farming, but if you have a specific weapon you like, you should use that. Your secondary weapon will be the Crystal Sage Rapier Pokey sword thing. Now, you don't have to hold it, but you do have to have it equipped. I'd recommend using two-handed style. Next up, your helmet is very important. It should be symbol of Avarice. This gives you probably the highest buff and drop rate in the game. For the sacrifice of doing a little bit of damage per second, this is really good for grinding. Now, the set of armor I use in the beginning was the Dancer set. It's pretty lightweight, but when you get used to farming, you shouldn't wear any armor. Your 4 ring slots, the first one should just be a ring you're comfortable with. The other 3 are really important. Havel's ring will increase your maximum load, which is how much you can carry. Since your helmet weighs a lot, you should use this. The other 2 are mainly luck rings. The Golden Serpent ring increases your drop rate, and the silver one increases your soul drop rate. The first area for farming is for the Sunlight Medal. You'll start at Lothric Castle and then proceed to kill this knight multiple times until you get it. This is one of the harder ones to get, having a 1% drop rate. Next up is the Watcher Dogs of Farron item, which is the Wolf's Blood Sword Grass. Now, it's pretty simple. You just start at the Ruins of Farron and you'll see these 3 enemies. Now, these 3 enemies have a chance of dropping this item. Now, they are really hostile, so I'd recommend being careful and not tanking hitting everything. The drop rate is higher compared to others, so this should be one of the easy ones. Next up, the Pale Tongue for Rosaria's fingers. Next up is also in Farron's Keep. These two Dark Knights have a chance of dropping the Pale Tongue. I'd recommend having a strong weapon since they do a lot of damage. If you memorize their attacks, you can take on one immediately and then the other one will follow a few seconds after. Next up is Vertebrae Shackles for the Moundmaker Covenant. Now this one is in the Catacombs of Curtis. Now the enemy that drops this item is right over here. I'd recommend using the Dragon Slayer axe since it has high damage. If you don't, then I'd recommend dodging a lot since they do a lot of damage and have a fast swing speed. The next item is Human Drags for the Covenant Aldrich Faithful. Start at the Pontiff Bonfire and use the elevator to get to this area. There will be a lot of pyromancers and I recommend killing them all to have a good chance of getting the item. And the last one, probably the most painful one to grind. It's a pretty long name, so I'm gonna... Proof of the Condor Kept. Yeah, that. So this item gets dropped by Silver Knights at the Unarlundor entrance. Now I'd recommend using the Greatsword since it has a high stun, since they probably do the most damage out of any of the enemies I've talked about. I thought this video would have been easy to make. It wasn't. 13 assignments are due in an hour, but no. Let me make a Dark Souls explanation video instead and fail all my classes. And that's about it. Okie dokie. Bye bye.